we're backing people. And we're backing people who have a sparkle of an idea, great chemistry between them, and a passion for what they're doing. And I think if we can get all those right in our early founders, I think we'll have a phenomenal group.
Hello. I'm Allie Garfinkel, and welcome to Term Sheet. This is the podcast where we cover the weird and wonderful world of private capital, tech, and startups. And I'm very excited about my guest this week, Kristina Shen, who is the co-founder and managing partner of Chemistry Ventures. But first, here's what's on my mind this week. Now, first things first, unless you've been living under a rock, you have probably heard that Elon Musk's SpaceX and XAI have merged. Now, a couple of things here. The first is, this is not surprising from an Elon perspective or an AI perspective. Elon Musk's companies certainly have a reputation for being a little bit circuitous financially and otherwise, as does AI. However, it's important to say that everyone I've ever met who has worked directly for Elon Musk has told me that actually this is kind of part of the secret sauce, his ability to sort of find synergies between rockets and data centers. So it's the sort of thing we can sit there and ask our questions, perhaps. But in the end, a lot of people who work for him do believe this is part of the Elon strategy. Now, I would argue, though, this doesn't matter at all in the context of Elon at a certain point. This is about something much bigger, and it is that we are about to enter the era of the mega AI IPO, trillion-dollar-plus IPOs, frankly, like we've never seen before. And in the context of talking about AI, it is always inevitable that we will also end up talking about investors, and in particular, in this case, venture capital. This past weekend, I published a feature about Kleiner Perkins, the legendary VC firm that is widely viewed as one of the OGs of Silicon Valley. For the last 8 years, the firm has been in the middle of a turnaround, and I was the first person they let through the doors in that time to write about the firm. My pitch to you to read the story is pretty simple. Tech is a place where things just die. They don't turn around. They don't find new life. But this story is perhaps the exception. Now, on to our interview for this week. I am so excited to have Kristina Shen because she is widely viewed as somebody who helps represent what the new guard of venture capital can look like. In 2024, Kristina left her role at Andreessen Horowitz to co-found a new firm called Chemistry. Kristina and I had a really interesting conversation about whether we can believe the hype around AI and healthcare, why she left to start a firm from scratch, and where she thinks the real value lies in this environment. Recorded at Brainstorm AI. Here's Kristina. We are here at Brainstorm AI San Francisco. This is the Term Sheet podcast, and Kristina Shen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
I'm so excited too. I really want to start by talking about you. When you left A16Z, you were a rising star. People looked to you as part of the future of the firm. Why leave? Why leave one of the biggest firms in Silicon Valley?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying that. I still sometimes
Everybody
feel
was saying that.
I still feel like that little 22-year-old who joined venture 15 years ago. Like, it's so kind of you to say that. I mean, things have been good with me. We're now a little over a year into Chemistry being live, and it's been a really fun journey. I mean, I think I was almost 7 years at Bessemer and then almost 5 years at Andreessen. It feels really fun finally to get to do my own thing.
What made you decide it was time to do your own thing?
I don't know if there was like one magical moment, honestly, but I think it was a bunch of little moments that added up. And I suddenly realized that I wanted to jump over to the other side. I think one thing is like, I feel like it's a dream to partner up with some of my best friends and people I think so highly in the industry. Mark Goldberg, Ethan Kurzweil, we're longtime friends. To get the chance to build something meaningful and with people that you love working with, I think is a very rare dream. But then even with that, I wouldn't do it unless I thought it could be really, really successful. And so a bunch of things had to hit at the same time. One, I had to believe that the three of us could do it. And I think it's a combination of timing. I think it's time for the league tables to change for venture. With the platform shift of AI, it creates shorter cycles to invest in great companies and build new names. I think we had a great opportunity at our last fund, so we're carrying that over to the new ecosystem. And I think I had to believe that a dedicated early stage fund could have outlier returns. And all that kind of hit at the same time. And so a lot of people ask me, were you planning to start a venture fund forever? Was this always your dream? The answer was no, actually. I think the right people, the right opportunity, and the right time all had to hit.
I was going to say, you just used a really interesting phrase, the league tables need to change in venture. What made you believe that? What got you to conviction about that?
I think that the world is constantly changing in different cycles. I think there's fantastic funds out there. But as funds have gotten significantly larger in size, the three of us just believe that fund size does dictate fund strategy. So by having a dedicated early stage fund, we can better align with our early stage founders. We were actually just talking about it earlier today. Like, one of the new investments that we made that isn't quite announced yet, but I promise I will tell you about it once it does come out. The founder said to us, I love that I am the biggest investment out of your fund, because that means I really matter to you and you really matter to me, and we have aligned success. And I think that is real in the industry. In order to do that, you have to have a dedicated early stage fund. So we purposely raised a $350 million fund for chemistry. We were fortunate to have an opportunity to go larger, but we did that because for first check through Series B, let's call it 3 to 30 million, we want each one of those founders to feel like they are meaningful to us. And that way we bring together our scarce resources to make them very exceptional and exciting.
How did you come to that 350 million number?
Oh, yeah. We use this really scientific methodology yeah, exactly. It went into an LM and spat out the 350 number.
You gave it all of the pre-existing conditions.
Exactly.
350 is perfect.
We didn't let it hallucinate or anything. I think it was a triangulation. So it was a combination of, we wanted enough investments in our portfolio so that we can have outlier returns. And we kind of felt like that would be, call it 30, 35, 40 investments. That's historically what people have felt is the number of investments you want in order to hit a handful that are really exciting to get outlier venture-like returns. So that was part of it. The other part of it is we wanted to comfortably be able to do real seeds and real Series A's. And so you run the math on that. That kind of roughly gets you to 350. And that's kind of felt like the right size for us.
Now, tell me a little bit about what has most surprised you or caught you most off guard in this first year of chemistry.
Gosh, so much stuff has surprised me.
In a good way?
Mostly,
I didn't know.
Mostly in a good way and some in I don't know. So what has really surprised me, I guess actually the really warm reception has really surprised me in a very positive, pleasant way, both from the LP community, from the venture community that quite frankly was very supportive in helping us raise this, to founders too. I made the statement to an old friend actually just over the weekend, which is, I actually felt like my personal network and deal flow was a significant multiple bigger than what it was even when I was at Great Funds. And I think it's because you're building your own brand identity, right? And so now Kristina Shen is tied with chemistry. And I think that has translated to me expanding my ecosystem networks in a way that I hadn't before.
Well, that's really interesting too, because historically a lot of people feel like they need that bigger brand, right? But actually we're in this interesting moment in venture too, where people are talking a lot about the brand of the investor mattering more. It sounds like that's kind of part of what's going on here.
That was a big part of our thesis. And don't get me wrong, there are fantastic venture fund brands out there, and we care a lot about making chemistry a fantastic brand. But I think founders are cueing into the fact that they're working with a person, not a firm, right? Obviously, firms are fantastic and you can come together, but we've seen people turn over at the large funds. It doesn't mean they're not still fantastic partners, but I think a lot of founders are putting a little bit more thought into who they want to work with and how can that individual and the individual's network help them.
What was it like fundraising? Because there are actually a lot of stories out there right now about how difficult it is to fundraise, whereas you guys are sometimes cited as folks who had a pretty easy time.
I think we were super fortunate. I think, benefited a lot from being first in the wave. I think there's fantastic talent coming out of the big funds. I think will continue to be fantastic talent coming out of many of the big funds. But I think it was very rare to have three people come together in a partnership. And I think that's what really attracted a lot of LPs who did invest.
Why?
Well, I think it's a couple things. First of all, I think partnerships are magical. You get the collection of three different networks coming in, not only in terms of your founder networks, but also your operator networks of how you can be helpful to your founders. But it's also not just the networks. It's also different schools of thought, right? We really brought together two great funds in their thinking, or three great funds in their thinking. Andreessen Horowitz, Index, and Bessemer all had different ways they thought about founders, different ways they prosecuted deals, different ways they worked with each other. And we got to pick and choose the best of what we loved from each component to bring to chemistry. And I thought that was really rare. It was rare to bring together three people that were hitting the same time in their career to come together. And it also enables us, again, to build a really interesting mix for our portfolio. I very much believe at the early stage that you want to work with enough portfolio companies and founders to have the opportunity to have venture-like returns, but also be small enough to constrain the fact that you can really deliver on the value prop that we always say we are the portfolio services. We don't hire portfolio services. That's really important to us. And, one thing that we do is we've got a dedicated Slack channel with every single founder that we work with. And we all jump in and whether it be customer intros, talent intros, back channels on people. Today I answered a D&O insurance question. It's nothing is too small, right? Because we want to be that partner from day one to the end of their journey. And you can only do that if there's a small enough group in our portfolio that we can manage that.
This gets at something I've also wondered a lot about, which is what can you do now at Chemistry that you could not do at a larger firm?
Ooh, it's such a good question.
You're in charge, in part.
I think it's all the tiny little things that enable you to be focused and move more quickly. I've always believed that many of us are playing the same game venture, but the goal is to be more focused and play it better. And so that means I only have a handful of really talented individuals I want to introduce. Well, that goes to our very limited set of portfolio companies at Chemistry. We've made 15 investments to date. It's been a phenomenal year. But when you compare that to the hundreds, if not thousands, of portfolio companies and other funds, that means you're spreading or peanut buttering your capabilities or your network and help across a lot of people.
I've never heard peanut buttering before.
Maybe it's I'm too indexed on having kids, but I feel like everything is peanut butter is sticky all the time. So I don't know. It's the first thing that popped in my head.
I loved it.
But,
I enjoyed it immensely.
But that's always how we felt. So I think the ability to iterate really quickly has been one super fun. And then the second is I think I get to do what I want, right? I get to only chase the founders I want. I get to build the firm. I get to market the firm I want. Even something as simple as, I actually really enjoy brand stuff. I loved us coming up with our name, Chemistry. I really loved making our website with our lovely marketer,
Did you know that about yourself before?
I did not, actually. I think Mark calls me the taste czar or the taste master. I really love...
the official Chemistry taste czar.
Oh, gosh. Maybe we should cut that one out.
No, it's in.
Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry, Mark.
But I've discovered how much I enjoy putting something out there in the world and being proud of it. And that's everything from the investments or founders that we work with, but also our identity and how we present ourselves as Chemistry.
And when you're at a larger firm, it's kind of ultimately inward facing. There are different things you're trying to solve for, where it sounds like here you're actually trying to solve for founders and a brand that represents you.
And I think that's fun, right? I've really enjoyed being a builder. And I don't try to say that I'm a builder in the same way that founders of a net new startup are, because I think it is different. But in some ways it is same. We took risk to jump out of fantastic jobs and great people that we were working with to bet on ourselves. And we take that risk every single day. And some things, always don't go well. And other times you win a great deal, you hire a great person. Hopefully someday I can say have fantastic returns. And it is the most rewarding thing ever. So we're only a little over a year into the journey, but it's been really fun.
Well, and it's the sort of thing, too, and we've talked about this before. A lot of people would say, on the face of it, that a new firm, what advantages could they have? And actually, in an AI landscape where there's so much capital flowing around and it's kind of commoditized, I could see if I was a founder looking at a world of investors saying, actually, their success is completely correlated with mine. They're not going to hang me out to dry. I could see that being really appealing.
I think that's a big part of our value prop. And then I also think our name means a lot as well, which is we intentionally named ourselves Chemistry because interpersonal dynamics matter. Relationships matter. Obviously, look, brand has a component. Terms matter, right? You got to pay a fair price. But people want to work with someone who has their back. They want to know 5 years, 10 years down the line that you're still going to fight for them. If there is a tiny little way that you can put a finger on the scale to make them more successful, they want to know you're going to do it. And I think that matters. And so when we actually took an embarrassing long time to pick our name, but it was important to us because I think chemistry is what brought the three of us together. And I also think it's what's brought us together with the handful of founders we already work with.
Well, I was going to say, I actually covered your first investment at chemistry, Assort Health. At the time, you said something to me that I've thought about a lot since, that you said you felt like you were being really picky because those first couple of deals were going to be a signal. Assort has since actually ripped, right? There's a long way to go, but they've raised another round, and it seems by all accounts they're doing great. Do you still feel like you're being picky? What does that look like for you?
Ooh, you're so good at picking my words from earlier in the year.
This is the danger of talking to me over and over, Kristina.
Good memory. Well, first of all the credit to Assort Health success all goes to John and Jeff. I mean, I think they are...
Hi, John and Jeff.
Phenomenal founders. And I think from day one, what excited me about them was that they always have a very high bar. And they were this rare combination of people who were technical, iterated really quickly, and they really cared. And I think that has translated to them building a phenomenal company in the healthcare voice space. I think to your question on me being picky, I mean, you know what? I think I deserve to be picky. That's always been my opinion. I think I continue to be very picky because I think that while we're in a really interesting time in AI where there's going to be lots of value creation, I think that I've always wanted to work with the best. And I think just like when founders hire the best talent to maintain a high bar so that other employees look around and say, oh, I want to work with these people. I think the same is true for building Chemistry's brand, which is we only want to invest in the best. I think it compounds our brand, and hopefully that means it compounds our returns as well.
Well, one of the things I found fascinating too is I've been doing, in part, Assort came to me because they emailed me a bunch of times, and you guys emailed me a bunch of times.
Persistence matters. Yeah.
Persistence absolutely does matter, and I was glad I said yes. But it was also the sort of thing I became very interested in, this sort of intersection of AI and healthcare, because there's so much investment going into the space right now. Are you looking at other AI and healthcare deals? How are you thinking about longevity there, especially because it's such a complex industry?
We are actually spending a lot of time in healthcare. And quite frankly, I think something like a quarter of the investments that we've made to date have touched healthcare in some fashion.
Oh, so you're in it.
I think there's a bunch of reasons to why that's happened. So one, I think we follow where founder talent is going. And I think smarter and more talented founders than ever are starting to move into healthcare for a bunch of reasons. It's a massive market. The second being, I think AI in particular translates really well in healthcare.
Why?
Historically, healthcare has been very labor intensive, back office heavy, lots of repetitive tasks. Those are all components that really cater well for AI and LLMs. You know, in particular, I think software historically has been harder in healthcare. And I spent a lot of time in software. I've been investing in software for over 15 years. Because software, you have to sell productivity to a human. Well, now with AI, you're finally able to displace certain humans in the back office. It's why we've seen AI be so successful displacing BPOs.
So for those at home, wait a second, what is BPO?
Sorry, business process automation. So services industries where you outsource some capability to an outsourced party to handle. A lot of times it's been call centers. A lot of times it's been billing, like in healthcare and healthcare codes. And in Assort Health's case, it's been outsourced call centers, right? So what Assort Health does is they use voice agents to enable patients to schedule appointments with their doctors.
At any time. Like if I called them right now to a doctor in New York, I would be able to schedule an appointment.
You could call at 3:32 a.m. And get hold of any doctor's agent that you need to in order to make a really valuable appointment. Which actually, like, we say it a little bit off the cuff now because we just expect that voice agents can do anything now. But you have to remember how important that is, right? You know, for some of these specialties that Assort Health sells into, sometimes people are waiting weeks, if not months, to get really important care for either themselves or their family members. And so now with AI and particularly Assort Health and healthcare, you're able to make those appointments and actually not only help the patient, but also help the doctor office in terms of displacing a lot of costs.
Where wouldn't you invest at the intersection of AI and healthcare right now? Where are you like, absolutely not, I don't think that's going to work, or it shouldn't work?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Okay, so I'll start with where I would invest. I think there's a lot of back office costs. I think AI can be really productive in displacing costs. I actually am really interested in consumer healthcare these days.
There are many things that can mean. Like, are we talking wearables?
Well, okay, yeah, I think it can mean a lot of things. I think that the healthcare system in the US historically has been so hard to navigate that consumers are taking control of their healthcare. And so what does that mean? There's new reimbursement codes that enable consumers to get certain healthcare benefits or services without having to pay for them directly because CMS codes allow you to. I think that consumers are willing to pay out of pocket to get certain advisory help or understand how to help either their parents or themselves. I'm really into a lot of those components, which is I think consumers want control of their healthcare, and I think they're going to get it now.
There's so much evidence, like the rise of wearables, Oura rings, blood tests, right? Like functional health, right?
Exactly.
There's I think there's a very interesting, increasingly personalized future of healthcare, especially because the system is so inefficient. People want to feel like they have agency.
Exactly. And I think, Function Health is a great example of consumers are willing to pay a significant amount of money out of pocket in order to get more data on their health. And I think that data is going to be the basis of a lot of interesting new companies as well, whether pharmaceuticals build drugs around it or et cetera. There's going to be a lot of directions they can go. So then your question is, where would I not invest? I still think that a doctor is important. And so while I think there will be huge transformations in how you can both help doctors make better decisions or help consumers better educated as their options, I believe there is a place for a doctor. And so direct displacement is probably not where I'm focused.
I'm going to tell you about something I worry about.
Oh, yes, please.
I think all the time about the wave of startups coming into healthcare, a system that is already so strained. I worry about diligence on some of these companies, right? Especially the ones that get to the place where they're interfacing with patients. And I worry about the bubble pop, too, and how it might affect some of those companies. How do you think about those parts of the equation?
I mean, I think the responsibility piece is very real. I would hope that the efficiency of capital means that we're trying to back founders that want to make a change in the world. But I think it's hard to control. And I think that's going to be one thing that we have to be cautious as both the tech and venture ecosystem to be careful with. The bubble burst, I think, is a real good question. I think there's no denying we're in a very frothy part of the market. I think valuations are high. We have the comparison to 2021 all the time. However, I very much believe the next generation of Googles, Facebooks, are going to be created from this platform shift. And so while we are going to see some bubble bursts at some point, I believe we're going to see tremendous value creation as well.
What parts of the market do you think are bubbly, and which ones do you think have staying power?
I think there's a lot of talk around quality of revenue these days.
Yes.
And
why are we still using SaaS era ARR? Somebody explain it to me.
I mean, it's even more extreme than that, which is, there's ARR, there's CAR or contracted ARR, then there's CAR from 2-3 years out. I think it's important to understand what metrics are relevant to the specific business. But I think it's okay that some companies have really high top of funnel from great consumers trying their products. And they might churn out, and then there's some stable base. I care a lot about what is revenue in 6 months. Right? Not what is revenue at the point in time today. A lot of people are mixing, month 1 times 12, which I think is complicated.
I see what you're doing, and 12 months is a long time.
12 months is a long time for some of these companies, given that many of them have only been around for less than 12 months. Look,
I have candy bars older than some of these companies, probably.
For sure. I think that somewhere down the line in the next 3, 6, 12 months, I think there is going to be a little bit of reckoning of what real revenue is and what is fantastic top of funnel interest, experimental consumer revenue. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like, I think there's also a lot written about low quality revenue. And I don't think, while I think not all revenue is created equal, I think having a phenomenal top of funnel is hard in this industry. You want distribution access. You want customers to want to come to you. And then it's up to founders and companies to build enduring products that are sustainable.
I was going to say, can low quality revenue become high quality revenue? Is that possible?
That's a great question. Okay, I think we're asking the wrong question. I think the right question is, to your buyer, are you the most important software or most important AI product to them? And if you're not number 1 or number 2 on the list, you probably fall below the line. And I think that is the test that we as investors and founders should be asking themselves. It's fantastic if you're growing from 0 to 10 million in year one. But if to your customer, you are the 10th product, I think there's going to be some sustainability questions. And that's what we ask. So we do a tremendous number of customer calls, and all we do is talk to end customers. And that's what we ask them. Is this the number one product for you? And if it is, that's meaningful. If you're number 5, that's hard.
Now, tell me a little bit about asking for a friend. How will we, you, me, all of us, know when the reckoning has started? Or will we know?
Well, if you hear the reckoning first, I hope you cue me in.
I'll call you, you call me.
I think there is very little value at the early stage to trying to decide when the reckoning is. I mean, think about the last bull market. People called it in 2015, 2017. Finally we had a little bounce in 2020. And then it obviously, actually investing 2020 was actually a phenomenal year to invest. So I don't think anyone knows when the reckoning is going to hit. I think it will start in the public markets. And everything takes a quarter to roll its way down to the early stage. And so it's like the public markets that translates to market value, then to late stage private, then to early stage. I think there's a lot of money in the venture capital ecosystem. And so I think it's more about making sure you're working with the long-standing companies that are going to be generational companies as opposed to trying to decide when the reckoning hits.
I was going to say, as we sort of wind down here, one of the things that gets talked about a lot are the incumbents, whether it's the Metas and the Googles, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, which I think we can call them incumbents now. I don't even know. Where do you think the balance of power lies right now? Who's at the top of their game?
First of all, I think the league tables are constantly changing, even in the current AI lab world. Gemini just released a phenomenal model that has done very well against the benchmarks.
And OpenAI is reportedly in a code red.
And OpenAI is in a code red. And by the way, actually, to me, for what it's worth, I think that signals that everyone knows that they have to be on their toes. I actually don't view that as a signal of weakness. I view that as OpenAI understands that we are still so early in this AI platform race that they know they have to prioritize. So I think the league tables are going to change multiple times over the next couple of years. I think Google has put forth a fantastic showing. I think Anthropic is rumored to go public and have done a really good job, particularly with Claude Code and entering into the enterprise. And what I really think is that each lab is going to become very well known for something that they're really good at. And it's very possible that they bifurcate the market into whatever it's going to be, code, consumer. You look at Google and Microsoft, they have tremendous distribution benefits into the enterprise. I think we're still in such early stages that they're going to switch multiple times.
The thing I love about the league tables analogy is because it gives me the image of European soccer where companies, I'm even saying companies' teams are relegated, like they can fall down a league. And it sounds like what you're saying is that actually can and does happen here.
I think it very much will happen. And we might be pleasantly surprised. And we haven't even talked about the Chinese labs and how they're going to fall into league tables and how interpersonal dynamics.
I think that's so underreported on in the US, by the way. I mean, someone actually said to me today, they were like, you know what the real code red is? China's AI in China.
I mean, if you look at a lot of what's going on in the image and video generation world, I think the Chinese models have had tremendous distribution. One of our portfolio companies, Comfy UI, they basically build AI workflows for images and video. A big percentage of the models that are being leveraged by consumers are Chinese models. And so, I think we're really early in this competition.
To wrap us up here, Kristina, give me one prediction for 2026 so we can look back on it in a year and I can tell you what you said.
One prediction. All right. So my prediction for 2026, I think it's going to be the year that computer use has tremendous applications at the application layer. And I'll give you a little context on this. So I always look at the AI labs as early signal as to what the infrastructure breakthroughs are going to be and see what happens at that layer. So I think 2024 was all about code generation, produce cognition and cursor.
I would say 2025 has been a year of code generation.
Yes, exactly. I would say this past year has been all about speech-to-speech models and voice. And we've seen, companies like Assort Health, but also companies like Sierra and Decagon emerge in customer support. And I think computer use is going to be tremendous in terms of agents being able to control how work is done, particularly in legacy industries. And in industries where there's not a lot of APIs and connected software and integrations to get work done, I think computer use is going to enable legacy industries like manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, stodgy historical industries get a lot of back office work done and eat a lot of share from what we've historically called the RPA industry.
So for some reason, when you say computer use, the first thing I think of is sitting in a basement with a giant dinosaur of a computer. I don't know why. I think it's because I say laptops. But it sounds like that is actually in part kind of what you're talking about, some of those tasks that people normally would sit down and do on a computer.
Exactly. I mean, these very repetitive tasks that get outsourced again to BPOs, or business process automation players, where you've got huge amounts of labor manually inputting data into ERPs, completing a form, answering emails. I think computer use agents, which has been the next breakthrough from the AI labs, are going to transform all of those industries and enable the automation of a lot of repetitive tasks that we see across services industries today.
Chemistry is a really interesting word in the context of startups. What fells a lot of early stage businesses, what fells a lot of venture firms is a failure of compatibility, a failure of chemistry. In your experience, what gives a team chemistry?
Such a good question, because obviously we care a lot about chemistry. We named ourselves chemistry because we care about the interpersonal dynamics between the three partners, as well as our chemistry with founders. And so what does chemistry mean to me? Honestly, I think it means trust, right? Because when you have great chemistry, and we see this between the three of us, as well as chemistry between co-founders, for example, when we're investing in a team, it's about, do we believe that they can run quickly and iterate quickly because they trust each other? That's what we're really looking for. And when you have chemistry or trust, you can really achieve anything. But if your team doesn't have chemistry, you could imagine co-founders bicker over small things. They are misaligned on what their end goals are. But if you have that chemistry or trust, I think you can really do anything.
How can you tell if trust has been built?
I actually think it's in all the small things. So one thing that I really love doing before we invest in any team, we love spending in-person time with them. We really love grabbing a dinner or a meal with the co-founders. And it's because you can see them finishing each other's sentences. You can see how they allow each other to answer one question versus the other and not talk over each other. All those little signals are the little chemistry pieces that you pick up that are the makings of trust. And we're at the early stages. I mean, who knows if our theses are right or wrong?
Or the company's a completely different company in 5 years.
Things evolve. Companies pivot. We're backing people. And we're backing people who have a sparkle of an idea, great chemistry between them, and a passion for what they're doing. And I think if we can get all those right in our early founders, I think we'll have a phenomenal group.
One of the greatest risks at any of these early stage companies, right, is a co-founder breakup. How can you tell if co-founders are going to stay together? What are the red flags you look for in those relationships?
The honest truth is we don't really know, but there's little signals that we really cue in on. So I really look at the division of labor. So I think great co-founders understand I'm good at X, you're good at Y, and we let each other run wild at what we're good at, but still come back to North Star. That's the second thing I look at, which is many times I meet co-founders one-on-one. It's not always a common thing. I meet them one-on-one frequently, and it's because I want to hear that their North Star is the same North Star. What do they want this company to become?
You want to hear they're speaking the same language.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Because quite frankly, and I learned a lot about co-founders from even Mark, Ethan, and myself coming together. We're co-founders. We had to get aligned. We had to know what we wanted chemistry to be today, and we wanted chemistry to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Hopefully it outlives all of us. And I think it's probably one of the most underrated things that people forget about is that you have to be aligned as to what you want the future to be. And it's the number one test with co-founders as well for founding a company is, do they want the same thing?
Mark and Ethan are your first co-founders.
Yes.
What did coming together with Mark and Ethan teach you about co-founder relationships and about chemistry?
Well, I've learned so much about myself personally as well as each other. We did everything, which is, I think we did the right thing, which we focused on what do we care about in the future and we want chemistry to become before we figured out all the little strategic details of even what chemistry would be called or what the strategy was. I remember so distinctly that when I first left Andreessen, the first person I told was like, okay, I'm going to move on from Andreessen. I'm going to start a fund. And they go, oh, so who's your LP? And I was like, oh, I don't have one yet. She's like, ooh, are you sure that was a good decision? And I
whoever
first
that
freaked
is,
out.
whoever that is, look at you now.
Well, I don't know about that, but I first freaked out. And then I really like, no, you're wrong. Because the tactics and the operational components we can figure out. But if we can't figure out if the three of us should come together and we want the same thing for chemistry, then that is the most important thing ever. And I think I advise so many people who are starting funds, and it's the part that I think people kind of jump over because they get so excited about the tactics and the strategy. Well, in the end, I think you have to be aligned together because it's a very long journey together.
It's funny, I'm remembering something right now. Back when I met Jeff and John at Assort, I asked how they came together, and they did a very extensive co-founder questionnaire. I believe it is originally from First Round, and it's the sort of thing where they basically sat around and were like, here are all of the things about me. And I think there's really a lot of value in that because, I mean, it's like a marriage.
It is like a marriage. And like, it's actually probably harder to get divorced from your co-founder.
It is actually logistically more difficult.
It's very difficult. I say the same thing with founders too. It's actually harder to get rid of your board member for someone that you work with than to actually get divorced. I think it's important. You know, we did everything from, we shared each other's performance reviews, which had all the good and all the bad in there. We kind of did 360s on each other. We spent a lot of soak time, all three of us together. 2 people like one-on-one in each combination. We had a triple date, which was very important with all the plus ones because you do know the spouses do matter. But I think the same is true for co-founders starting a company, right? Like you got to be aligned from every component or respect every component of each other's lives, even if you might not be identically the same. And I think that is all tied to having the same North Star.
We are at time, but I do want to ask you one more question, if that's okay. For the founders listening to this, what is one piece of advice you think every founder needs to hear? And what would you say if you weren't afraid of hurting anyone's feelings?
Ooh, okay, let's see. Of course, you always get the zinger right in the end. Look, my biggest piece of advice, honestly, is trust your gut. I mean, I think everyone's intuition is generally right. Trust your gut around, do you listen to the advice that you're getting? Trust your gut around the people that you really want to work with. Trust your gut around, does this feel like a sustainable trend or not a sustainable trend? And I think the best founders ignore everybody and trust what they believe. And that's how I operate in my life. You know, I've gotten a tremendous amount of advice. Some of it was great. Some of it was not so great. But in the end, I think I've been right. And so maybe that's not how I want to end this conversation, but
no, I love it. How often do we have a woman just sit there and say unequivocally, I think I've been right? I need some of that energy.
I'm tired of people telling me that, I wasn't right. And so, look, I'm not always right, but I think I will never regret trusting and doing what I believe. And so that's maybe the takeaway I'd say is like, trust your gut and no one's going to know what's right for you better than yourself.
Kristina, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
And that was Kristina. I keep thinking about what Kristina said about the league tables needing to change in venture and how AI will ultimately change who can win in venture. We'll have to see if that's ultimately true on a firm level. But I do think there is something that she's saying that is fundamentally the case, which is that this next era is absolutely going to be about speed in one way or another. It is going to be about alignment, and it is going to be about believing before it's obvious. Now, you can say that's always true of venture, but my joke about venture capitalists is that they're a world of contrarians who are remarkably good at following one another. And it's important to remember that maybe for this next era, that won't necessarily be the case. That's it for Term Sheet. See you next week. Term Sheet is a Fortune Magazine podcast. Our producers are Joyce Coe and Chase McCleary. Our production manager is Sam Freund. Our supervising producer is Shako Liu. Our executive producer is Lydia Randall. Fortune's head of video is Adam Bannicky.